today we are going to take a moment to read an article to build some background knowledge about what's about to happen in our text. Okay, and so you can tear off this article on the back of your packet that says the discovery and importance of the Rosetta Stone. Before we get started, we have a quick write. It says, describe the Kane family. What is Sadie's relationship like with her father and Carter? Why is it this way? So you need to talk about how Sadie doesn't know them very well. They don't have a great relationship because she only gets to see them twice a year. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the vocabulary. Our focus question for today is, how is Sadie's point of view about the events in the British Museum different from Carter's? And we want to be able to describe what happened at the British Museum and determine the meaning of some unknown words. 3 words we do need to know are curator. That is the person who's in charge of the museum exhibits. They're a curator. The next word is Rosetta Stone, and it's a stone slab that has 3 different languages on it: Greek, Egyptian, hieroglyphics, and another one. And that is the reason why people were able to figure out what the Egyptian hieroglyphics meant. Alright, and the last one is artifact. That's an object of cultural or historical interest. And so this is the symbol of Isis or Aset, and it has significance to people in ancient Egypt. Alright, we're going to get started reading our article. Make sure you have your desk looks like my screen. You have your notes on one side and your text on the other. And before we get started reading, we're going to first ask a how or why question about the title. Okay, so we noticed the title and we noticed the picture of the Rosetta Stone, and so we're going to ask a how or why question. And the question I came up with is, why is the Rosetta Stone important? Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to read. And remember, we're going to be underlining the answers to our question, why is the Rosetta Stone important? Let's begin reading. The Rosetta Stone, a 1,700-pound piece of rock called a stele, discovered in the sands of Egypt, was the key to modern understanding of Egyptian hieroglyphs. And I'm going to stop right there because this tells me exactly why the Rosetta Stone was important. It was the key to modern understanding of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. And I'm going to write that sentence down in 1B for my main idea. The Rosetta Stone was the key to modern understanding of the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. Let's keep reading. We're looking for, how is the Rosetta Stone the key to Egyptian hieroglyphs? How was it a key? What did it do that made it able to understand Egyptian hieroglyphs? The stone discovered in 1799 by a soldier in the French army headed by Napoleon Bonaparte contains essentially the same text in 3 different languages: Ancient Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphs. A full translation of the Greek versions was completed in 1803, but it was 20 years before linguists worked out the details of the hieroglyphs. Okay, we'll stop right there. We know that it was a key to their understanding because it was in 3 different languages. So if you knew one of the languages, you would be able to figure out which symbols matched which words in the language that you knew. Okay, so in box 2A, we would write, the Rosetta Stone contains the same text in 3 different languages: Ancient Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphs. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. And we want to know, how did the British get possession of the Rosetta Stone? Okay, so now the French have it. It's 1803 and the French have it. Bonaparte became the leader of the French army and people in the late 18th century. Because of the French Revolution and other European governments' opposition to it, France was at war with most of the other European powers for 2 decades. Because Bonaparte was the central figure in this series of conflicts, they are often called the Napoleonic Wars. The French presence in Egypt intensified as the 18th century was ending. French troops claimed ownership of the large parts of Egypt. While building forts in the area, French troops found the stone near the Nile Delta town of Rashid, also called Rosetta. The stone, 45 inches high, 28.5 inches wide, and 11 inches thick, was one of the many artifacts unearthed by French forces. Okay, so far, the article has told us how the French discovered the Rosetta Stone. We haven't learned how the British got it yet. Let's keep reading. In 1801, British troops defeated the French forces in Egypt. Part of the settlement after this battle was that Britain gained control of the stone and other artifacts. Beginning the following year, the British Museum had the Rosetta Stone on display, but by that time, neither the British nor the French really knew what they had found. Okay, we'll stop right there because we know that the British troops defeated the French forces in Egypt and they got the Rosetta Stone and they sent it back to Britain and displayed it in a museum. So in 2B, we would write, the British defeated the French army in Egypt in 1801 and got possession of the Rosetta Stone as part of the peace agreement. The Rosetta Stone was placed in the British Museum for display. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. We're at the use and understanding. We want to know, how did linguists figure out the meaning of the hieroglyphs using the Rosetta Stone? The use and understanding of hieroglyphs had gone out of fashion in the early centuries AD. A few Arab historians made an attempt in the 19th and 10th centuries, but without success. A few more European historians tried again in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, still without success. The discovery of the Rosetta Stone renewed an interest in understanding hieroglyphs, and historians and linguists tried again. Scholars still understood ancient Greek, but struggled initially with the administrative technicalities of the language on the stone. British translation of the ancient Greek text was available in early 1802. The following year, French linguists working on a copy of the text made after the initial discovery produced a copy in both French and Latin. Okay, so they were able to translate part of the Rosetta Stone because they knew Greek. And so they were able to translate it from Greek to French to Latin. But they still haven't figured out the hieroglyphs yet. Let's keep reading. Meanwhile, the French linguists have recognized some of the letters and the other non-hieroglyph set of writing that belong to what came to be called Demotic script. Characters written in this script had been found in Egypt and were similar to the Coptic language, which had begun in the area in more recent times. A French scholar, Antoine Isaac Sylvester de Sacy, reported identifying in the Demotic script the names of 5 people, including Alexander the Great and Ptolemy. Okay, so far, they've been able to figure out this other text, the second text, not the hieroglyphs, but the Demotic. Okay? Sylvester de Sacy did not work on the translation further except to remark to one of his colleagues that the names of the hieroglyphs might be written phonetically. This position was based on the work done by previous French scholars. A British researcher took the French suggestion to heart and succeeded in identifying several similarities between the ancient Greek text and the Demotic script. Until this time, researchers in all countries have believed that the texts were independent of one another. Another French scholar was the one who ultimately cracked the code. Jean-François Champollion had in 1814 identified the phonetic character spellings the name of Cleopatra in 2 inscriptions on the famous obelisk. One inscription was Greek and the other was in hieroglyphs. Champollion turned his attention to the Rosetta Stone and eventually found similarities in the pharaonic names Ramses and Tutmosis. In 1822, he announced a full translation of the hieroglyphs. The Frenchman eventually constructed a hieroglyphic dictionary and a grammar of ancient Egyptian writings. Okay, we'll stop right there because we've learned how they figured out the language of the hieroglyphs. The linguists first translated the text to Greek, and then they realized that all 3 texts said the same things, and they used the Greek to figure out the Demotic, and they used the Demotic to figure out the hieroglyphs. In box 3, you would write, the linguists could translate the Greek text, and then they realized the texts all said the same thing. They used the Greek text to figure out the code for the hieroglyphs. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for box 4. You want to know, why do historians believe that the text on the Rosetta Stone was written in 3 different languages? Let's keep reading. Many historians now think that the Rosetta Stone text was written in 3 languages so most Egyptians could understand it. Ancient Greek was the language of the pharaohs, and at the time the stone was carved, 196 BC, Demotic was the common script of Egypt at the time. And of course, hieroglyphs was the language of the priests. The text itself is a list of all 3 of the current pharaohs Ptolemy V had done so far in his reign. The Rosetta Stone is part of a larger stele that fragmented in the centuries it was buried. Thanks to the efforts of Champollion and other scholars, everyone can now understand ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Alright, so in box 4 we would write, historians believed that the text on the Rosetta Stone was written in Greek because it was the language of the pharaohs. Press pause to write down the first part and play when you're ready for the next part. The next part says, it was written in Demotic because that's the language most Egyptians spoke at the time. Press pause to write down your answer, play when you're ready for the last part. And it was written in hieroglyphs because that's the language of the Egyptian priests. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the paragraph. It says, why is the Rosetta Stone important and how